As the clock ticks down on President Biden's term, concerns are mounting in Israel about what his final months in office might hold. With the war on Gaza and Lebanon continuing, Israeli officials are increasingly concerned about potential shifts in American policy. Will President Biden use his remaining time to exert pressure on Israel, especially over Gaza? Or will Netanyahu hold out, hoping for the return of a more Israel-friendly administration under Donald Trump? Could we witness a shift in U.S. policy towards Israel, especially regarding the ongoing Gaza conflict? Welcome to In Depth. The Jerusalem Post has explored the evolving dynamics of U.S.-Israeli relations as Donald Trump prepares for a second term. While his first term was marked by strong pro-Israeli actions, such as moving the U.S. Embassy to Jerusalem, his second term could bring new priorities and shifts in policy. With no re-election campaign to worry about, Trump's decisions may be influenced by a new inner circle and a broader political landscape. For Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu, Trump's return poses a challenge. A unified Republican government means Netanyahu will have less leverage to counter presidential demands, as he did during the Obama years. Trump's support could also change how Netanyahu presents himself politically in Israel, reducing the advantage of being seen as standing alone against the United States president. And with Biden's final days in the White House approaching, how might his policies shape the Middle East? To help us explore his potential influence on the escalating conflicts in Gaza and Lebanon, we're joined from New York by Ahmed Maharim, a writer and political researcher, and Joel Rubin, former U.S. Deputy Assistant Secretary of State from Washington. It's a very warm welcome to our show, and we have the pleasure to have you with us today. Start off with Mr. Maharim. As President Biden enters the final months of his presidency, how likely is it that he will use his remaining time to push Israel on critical issues like Gaza, and what could these pressures look like?
After regards, I don't think that the President Biden will be taking care of that issue because he had other issues more important. I think within the next 2 months, he is supposed to focus on the most important part, which is a peaceful transfer to the White House and the presidential responsibility. For more than 1 year, he already realized the main factor while he failed and Kamala Harris failed to win the situation of the election because they're defending blindly to Israel for more than 1 year. So I think that he's considered that
do you mean, sir, he realized or he is going to realize why he failed?
I think he already realized, and his cabinet and the people around him, all the Democrats in the
Your
cabinet
narrative,
realized
sir, on his failure. What do you think? Why do you think he failed?
Okay, from the point of the election, there is a group of concern, mainly Arab and Muslims in different 7 swing states, and Michigan was one of them. They refused exactly to be on his side because 2020 they supported him, and one of the main factors of his successful previously that Arab and Muslim, they were on his cabinet and they were on the Democrat. What the Democrat chose negatively towards Arab and the peaceful in the world, defending Israel dramatically, that make Arab and Muslim community to be against his wishes, and that's why
this is because of the war in the Middle East, sir.
Exactly. Some of
Okay,
them, they are
I
not.
move on to Mr. Robin. Sorry to interrupt you. I'll be back again to you, sir. Mr. Robin, do you think Biden might seek to exert pressure on Israel to make diplomatic concessions regarding Gaza, similar to how the Obama administration handled the 2016 UN resolution on settlements?
Well, it's great to be with you and with my colleague. I think that President Biden, if he were to be able to decide on his own without any external factors, he likely would not. But there are issues coming up, and they're coming up very soon, within the next several weeks. The first is that the Senate will likely, as soon as next week, take up and debate a question about withholding arms to Israel because of human rights violations. A joint resolution of disapproval is being introduced by Senator Bernie Sanders and other senators. So that's happening. And at the same time, a letter sent by Secretary Blinken and Secretary of Defense Austin also demanded that Israel change the way it is prosecuting its war and its impact on human rights, and gave a timetable. So those are the near term. But outside of that, no, I don't think we're going to see much of a change in the Biden policy towards Israel in these remaining 2 months, except for pressure to try to get a ceasefire for hostage deal, similar to the kind of discussion we've seen in recent months.
Okay, Mr. Maharem, could Biden leverage diplomatic or military aid as a tool to pressure Netanyahu into halting the ongoing conflicts in Gaza or Lebanon?
That could be another area of a good solution, but I don't think he will do so. And in order to do so, he needs a couple of different assistance from different kind of the power in the United States. I don't think he will be more concerned about making things easy to handle the matter to the new president coming on the 20th of January. So I doubt very much that he can do such a thing.
We know there is a meeting between Biden and Donald Trump on Wednesday, and that Biden invited Donald Trump to the, of course, White House. And Mr. Rubin, back again to you. Israeli officials seem to be waiting for a shift in leadership, with an eye on Trump's return to the White House. How does this affect Netanyahu's calculations in handling Biden's demands during the remainder of his term, sir?
Well, there are two ways to think about it. The first is that he can, if he does not like what President Biden is proposing, wait him out and put pressure back on President Biden and ignore his requests because he believes that Donald Trump coming into office will be more friendly. But there's also a reverse, which is quite possible, which is that because Donald Trump does not want to see new escalatory wars and has said this repeatedly, that there may be more aggressive military action by Israel in the next couple of months with President Biden in office, so that he does not do that when Trump comes into office and poison the relationship with Trump. So those are the two sort of dynamics that I think we have to be looking out for. This has happened, I may add, in the past, where Israel has been engaged in heavy military action just before a new president came in 2008 to 2009, when George W. Bush left and Barack Obama came in. There was a major escalation in hostilities as well. So this is a period where there's a lot of freedom of action for the prime minister compared to previous or prior to the election.
Okay, Mr. Maharem, if Biden does attempt to push Israel on Gaza or other regional issues, how likely is it that that's going to lead to a ceasefire or an end to the conflict, sir?
I don't think even he was trying to do so, but what's happening from the point of Benjamin Netanyahu, he is escalating, unfortunately, the situation in the areas, in Hamas, in Gaza, and in Lebanon, also with Hezbollah. I think what Benjamin Netanyahu is trying to use as much as he can to gain those couple of weeks to destroy as much as he can, waiting for the 20th of January when Trump will be in the office. Then he can offer him that he can stop the war in both areas, giving him like a gift to welcome Trump to the White House in order to show the American people that Trump, he is capable to have an influence on Benjamin Netanyahu.
Okay, sir, you'll wait with us. Before we continue, let's turn to a report titled, Will Biden's final months change Israel's future? As the conflicts in Gaza and Lebanon intensify, many are watching closely to see if President Joe Biden will use his final months in office to adjust U.S. policy towards Israel. Stay with us.
As President Joe Biden's term ends, Israeli officials are increasingly anxious about potential shifts in U.S. policy. They fear that Biden might leverage his remaining months to pressure Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, particularly regarding the ongoing war in Gaza and broader regional conflicts. Tensions between the U.S. outgoing administration and the war government have grown, with American officials expressing doubts about Israel's transparency in its military and diplomatic plans. Recent incidents, including Israeli operations in Lebanon and the assassination of high-profile figures like Ismail Haniyeh and Hassan Nasrallah, were reportedly carried out with minimal U.S. forewarning. The growing atmosphere of suspicion has intensified mistrust among key players. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan has urgently called for more transparent and detailed information. He expressed concern that if the U.S. government is not adequately informed, support for ongoing initiatives may decline, potentially impacting relationships and efforts abroad. Speculation suggests Biden may push for significant diplomatic concessions, such as advancing peace initiatives with Lebanon. These moves could mirror the Obama administration's 2016 decision to abstain from a UN resolution condemning Israeli settlements, signaling U.S. disapproval and breaking its tradition of shielding Israel with vetoes. Complicating matters, Israeli officials are looking ahead to the Trump administration, anticipating a return to even more favorable policies for them. This dynamic puts Netanyahu in delicate position, complying with Biden's potential demands or delay, banking on Trump's more supportive stance. As the U.S. and Israel approach this pivotal moment, the coming months will likely test Netanyahu's diplomatic strategy, balancing Biden's potential pressures with anticipation of Trump's return and pledge to end all wars. The future of U.S.-Israel relations hangs in the balance, shaped by the shifting priorities of both administrations.
We're back again to continue our discussion, and this time, Mr. Rubin, there are suggestions that Biden may push Israel to advance peace initiatives with Lebanon. How feasible do you think this is, sir?
Yeah, I believe that the president is going to continue to try to create a calm in Lebanon. We're going to see Amos Hochstein most likely out diplomatically working on this. And frankly, the Israeli government also has been speaking with Hochstein as well. But when it comes to stopping the war and calling for additional pressures, President Biden is probably going to continue to engage in the way he has been. There are not many other tools. The cutting off of arms, that is tied to the actions in Gaza. That's what the Senate will likely debate. That's what is part of the letter, the communications I mentioned from Secretaries Blinken and Austin. So, it's more going to be about pressure and building up support across the region. One additional factor worth mentioning as well is diplomacy with Saudi Arabia. And will there be a big deal? Will there be some type of American-Saudi deal that includes Israel or not, is something that people are talking about in Washington quite a bit. And that could, of course, have an impact on diplomacy with Lebanon as well. But there are concerns that it's not going to go forward without Israeli assurances on the Palestinian file. And with Donald Trump coming up to power, looks less likely.
It's less likely. Okay, Mr. Maharim, with Israeli officials optimistic about the return of Trump to power again, how much of an impact do you think Trump in the White House has on Netanyahu's decisions in his war on Gaza and Lebanon?
Well, it could be a new era of being optimistic and looking for the future. Maybe Trump, within his the coming 4 years, he could be able to try something different, because he is going to concern about his relation with the Gulf countries and with the Arab world. Especially, there is a lot of hope that economy in that area can be developed with that time. So I think with Benjamin Netanyahu, he may be able to listen carefully to different optimistic ideas from Trump. No matter how much Trump is going to defend and help Israel as usual, but from the other side, Trump administration will be very much careful to make kind of balance with the future and stable relation with the Arab in this area, especially to give a chance to more open, peaceful relation with Arab countries and Israel. So I think something different can be happening in the area within the next few months.
So, sir, you're optimistic?
I am too optimistic, yes.
Okay, yeah. Mr. Rubin, Netanyahu is reportedly facing growing pressure from the Biden administration, especially regarding the war on Gaza. How do you think Netanyahu will balance the potential demands from Biden with his anticipation of a more favorable stance from Trump?
Well, the reality is that the Trump administration 4 years ago wanted to have peaceful relations for Israel with every country, every Arab country it could, except for the Palestinians. It really did not work aggressively, if at all, on the Palestinian issue. And I think that we're going to see similar.
Very true, sir. Very true.
And we're going to see a similar dynamic. I agree with my colleague. Getting an agreement with Saudi Arabia, having Saudi Arabia work with Israel would be a high priority for President Trump, and quite likely something that Prime Minister Netanyahu would want to give as a gift, to President Trump and not to President Biden. But the key question will be, what about the Palestinians? And will the Arab states move away from the Palestinians like they did when President Trump was president the first time and cut deals, or will they not? And how will they react? Because it's different today than it was 4 years ago because of the Gaza war.
Mr. Maharim, Israeli officials seem to be counting on a shift in United States policy once Trump returns again. How realistic is this expectation, and how much did this shape Netanyahu's current decision making?
I think expectation is really highly. And the most critical question is the day after.
Sorry to interrupt you. Do you think that Netanyahu counts on Donald Trump or counts on Biden?
I think he'll count on Trump because he tried him before, and there is kind of compromise between both. He can rely on Trump because Trump is not only defending Israel, but from the other side, he's looking to the future in the area. So I think what will happen very soon in the area, something will be on the beneficial of the American citizen around the world, people in the Middle East as well.
Mr. Rubin, given the current strain in U.S.-Israel relations, especially over military actions in Lebanon and Gaza, how do you think Israel will seek to resolve these tensions with the Biden administration? Or is it more likely that Israel will wait for Trump's return before making any major policy moves?
Yeah, I think that it's really unlikely that we'll see any major policy changes in the last days of President Biden. Now, President Biden has a lot of support in Israel and has been seen as a strong friend. In many ways, it cost him politically here in the United States for his strong defense of Israel, especially during the war in Gaza. But I don't think we'll see any major shifts. The only possibility would be, is there a way to get out the hostages? And in particular, the American hostages. There are 6 or 7 American hostages who are still being held in Gaza. That for President Biden, getting Americans out of harm's way across the world in multiple countries has been a high priority. He cut deals with Vladimir Putin to get Americans wrongly detained in Russia, to get them out. He's done this, and I think that, if anything, will be the highest priority in these final 2 months.
Mr. Maharim, do you think Biden might push for a ceasefire?
Approved by the Israeli Benjamin Netanyahu, he will continue doing what he's doing, destroying, taking the advantage that there is a kind of I'm quite sure about what's happening with the next 2 months. He will do what he's supposed to do, waiting for the Trump administration to stop the war and give them this as a gift from his side.
Sir, in 2 months' time already, Gaza, for the past 36 days, there's been ethnic cleansing. There's nothing anymore, even ambulances, even aid, there's nothing. What do you think in this transitional period, either Biden or Trump can do when Gaza is already, the case is settled? Whereas if we discuss Lebanon, so we're trying to bring out Lebanon from this crisis as soon as possible.
Well, unfortunately, it is kind of very complicated. From his point that the time is helping him, that he can do what he done already for the last 1 year, and nobody was able to stop him. Within this absence now of a proper administration in the White House, that he can still doing what he is supposed to do, but with coming 20th of January, when Trump will be in the office, something can be very, very important to happen.
Hopefully, let's wait till the 20th of January. Sir, Mr. Rubin, considering U.S. domestic politics, how much freedom does Biden have to pressure Israel? And what role do you think American public opinion plays in Biden's stance on the Gaza war?
Well, the honest truth is that Joe Biden has no more political pressure at all. He's done. He's retiring. He's out of politics on January 20th. And so for him, he's free. But his instincts have always been to support Israel. And even in looking at the exit polls from this election, it's pretty clear that Americans broadly supported Israel and its position in this war. And so I don't think that President Biden feels political pressure to help the Democratic Party navigate differently either. So I think we'll likely see him stay the course. And one thing I want to mention as well, many advisors around Donald Trump have publicly rejected any concept of a two-state solution with the Palestinians. Some have even referred to Gaza as a great place to invest on the beaches with hotels. So we're going to see a very different kind of communication from Donald Trump's team that we saw against Joe Biden, who always did call for a two-state solution, even though clearly that was not taking place.
Sir, if a vacuum took place within the Democrats, what do you think is the main reason beyond this vacuum that took place and made the Democrats reach to this level?
Well, the Democratic Party strongly supports Israel and Middle East peace. Democratic voters, interestingly...
So do you think this is the main reason beyond this vacuum?
Well, vacuum in what way? I mean, there's really the challenge is that the Israeli government and President Biden have not seen eye to eye on all aspects of the ceasefire for hostage deal, but overwhelmingly, President Biden's policy has been supported by the American Jewish community, and the political support has been consistently there. But the base of the party has been very much, as we all know, against it. But the base of the party no longer has influence on the policy making with this president and will have no influence with President Trump.
Okay, Mr. Maharim, how might Biden balance his legacy goals in the Middle East against Israel's strategic interests in the coming weeks, sir?
Well, I think he lost a lot of consider from the allies in the Middle East, especially the Gulf states. His support dramatically over the budget for Israel for the last a year and maybe another month or two. That will make difference. That I hope with the new administration of Trump, something can do a little bit of balance. But almost Biden, he lost a lot of his credibility within the
Well, Rubin, former U.S. Deputy Assistant Secretary of State from Washington. Thank you both guests for your insights and valuable informative knowledge. With a new administration on the horizon, Israel's next moves remain closely tied to the evolving dynamics in Washington. As Biden's presidency draws to a close, the question remains, will his final actions reshape U.S.-Israeli relations, Or will Netanyahu wait for Trump's influence on the region's future? That brings us to the end of today's episode of In Depth. Thank you for watching and stay tuned for more news coming up here and updates on Q News.